But it's two different ways to produce the wine.
Yes.
In the first way, the growth, you are an artisan and crafter. In the other one, you're more creative and you create something you have in your mind. It's two completely different ways to operate. We are a growth in Château Cheval Blanc, so we deliver the expression of a place.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are at an away game in Saint-Émilion, about to have a conversation with Pierre-Olivier Clouet. Right?
Yes, exactly. Pierre-Olivier Clouet.
Clouet.
Exactly.
The Director General de Château Cheval Blanc. What an incredible opportunity. Thank you for having it and being on the show.
We are so happy to receive you here in Cheval Blanc in Saint-Émilion.
Even with 12 people.
Yeah.
So I was reading about your career, which is fascinating. We'll get into it. We're going to talk about wine. We're going to talk about Château Cheval Blanc, of course. We're going to talk about Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon. But the one thing that kept coming up about you was you're incorrigibly hyperactive. What's that? What does that? What does that say? What does that mean?
So, you know, when you work in a place like Cheval Blanc with many different kind of job and responsibility, if you want to have the capacity to manage the whole team, you had to have interest for everything, for vineyard managing, for winemaking, but as well for communication and marketing, for welcoming people, for many different things. So I think that if you want to really run a chateau like Cheval Blanc, you have to have a certain energy just to bring that to the team.
I think you're right. And there are a lot of pieces to this. And in fact, we'll get right into some of this stuff because my brain is going to go in a lot of directions because there's so many interesting things to talk about. But because of the classification of 1955, which I know we just stopped out of, and we're going to talk about that too. But there is something about that classification that's different than the original 1855 classification for the left bank, which is it encompasses everything, right? It's the vineyards, the chateau, the service, the hospitality.
Exactly. In fact, running a chateau is like a small company with many different things to do.
Yep.
So I think that the pleasure of this kind of job is to have the opportunity to take care of many different people and many different subjects. So this is quite interesting.
So here's the part that I find fascinating about wine, because all in all, when it's all said and done, when we're all talking about the people we work with and the hospitality, and our guests are on a tour right now, but it's really about the wine. That has to be handled first.
Yeah, this is in fact the heart of our job. So vineyard managing and winemaking. So of course, 95% of the time, I'm focused on the winemaking, and more importantly, I'm focused on the delivery of the spirit of the place into the glass, into the bottle. So much more than the notion of quality, I focus my attention to the identity of Château Cheval Blanc. So I'm not paid to produce the best wine of Bordeaux or the best wine of the world. I'm paid to produce the best Cheval Blanc every year. So we want to respect the DNA, the identity, the typicity of that specific piece of land.
Is that a daily pressure, so to speak? Is it pressure or is it a love?
Both. It's at first a love, because when you discover Cheval Blanc for the first time of your life, you fell in love with that place, because you can find that there is a certain energy, there is a certain aesthetic, there is a certain passion that is in that place. So I consider that first it's a love, and much more than a pressure, it's a kind of responsibility that you have. Who I am to have in my hand the future of Château Cheval Blanc. So every single morning when I park my car here in Cheval Blanc, I feel the responsibility not to give any deception to the owner of Cheval Blanc, to the wine lover that know our wines everywhere in the world. So we want to do our best to continue to make Cheval Blanc alive, with the same identities than 2 centuries ago, but as well with the challenge and the adaptation of a new world that appear, even with climate change, with social impact of many different subjects here in France. So the responsibility is probably the most important word after the love.
Hey, have a listen to Monica Elling. She is a D1 tennis player who just converted over to digital marketing, not just, but she's been digitally marketing and brand building in the wine business for many, many years. One of the most insightful conversations I've had on the show. Have a listen to that. And I have a series on South Africa coming up that starts next week. And I think you're going to have a wonderful time listening to the South African history of wine. But you're going to start with the conversation with May-Eliane Lanquezon, who was alive when her parents' chateau was overrun by the Nazis, Pichon Longueville, in 1944. And it's an incredible memory for a 98-year-old woman to tell us the story about her trek in the wine business as a Bordelaise, and then now moving to South Africa and starting a winery at 70 years old. Hey, if you have something good to say, go ahead, give us a review and subscribe to the show. If you have nothing good to say, please don't say it at all. And this is the part that I get confused with, or that I struggle with, because I spent so much time on the internet selling wine. And that is the worst place to be for selling wine, because it becomes nothing about what's in the bottle or the expression of what's in the bottle. It becomes what the price is.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible place for a product like wine, in my opinion. But from the industry standpoint, and this is the part that I love to talk about, there's no, in my opinion, there's no bad vintages. Because based on your definition, you are creating the best wine that the earth has given you for that vintage, right?
Exactly. There is no bad vintage. There is no good vintage in Château Cheval Blanc. There is some vintage which are easy to produce and some vintage which are difficult to produce.
Right.
This is a producer point of view.
Right.
I consider that every bottle of wine is like a bottle that should tell 2 stories. The story of the place, absolutely. You should recognize the DNA of Château Cheval Blanc in each different vintages, but as well, we should tell the story of the vintage. And a warm and a dry vintage, the wine going to show intense, voluminous, silky, powerful, dense. And in a cool and wet vintage, the wine going to be fresh, precise, shy, balanced, long, more than large. So we let enter in the bottle the spirit of the year. And this is something super important. We keep the balance of our grapes to express the climatic condition of the vintage. And if you want to compare that with an artist, you can prefer Guernica, for example, if you love Picasso, but you can't tell that you know Picasso because you only see also Guernica.
Right.
So if you want to understand the spirit and the philosophy of an artist, you have to understand his whole painting.
That is a really great analogy, because, well, for example, I have been reading about Gertrude Stein Hemingway in Paris in the 20s. And, you know, Picasso was a friend, and so was Monet and Matisse. They're all friends. And I didn't appreciate art. I grew up in Southern California. We didn't have art. But when you read those stories, you start to get an appreciation of who these people were and are. So for you, your job is to pass through Cheval Blanc.
Of course. So you know, in the past, there is a super well-known woman who was named Coco Chanel.
Oh, yeah.
And Coco Chanel said in French, "La mode se démode, mais le style perdure." So one day the trend will become not trendy, but your style is forever.
Wow.
So we pay attention to the style of Château Cheval Blanc. We don't produce some wines for our clients. We don't care the taste of our clients.
Right.
We produce Cheval Blanc with the taste of the place, and after we spend time with our clients to explain them who we are.
Wow,
so
thank you.
We want to bring them into the world of Cheval Blanc, rather than to transform Cheval Blanc to follow the trend of the market.
Thank you for saying that way. You said earlier you didn't think your English was that great for the show, but I think you just explained something extraordinarily important, because there is a movement in the world of wine, the marketing of wine, to switch gears and become consumer client focused, make what they want. And unfortunately, I think in the Napa Valley, that's become part of their mantra. You've got that over-extracted, almost sugary style.
In our world, this is always a situation where you will be the loser. If you follow the trend, you will be always the loser.
Right.
Why? Because we produce wine for aging. On average, a wine lover will open a bottle of Cheval Blanc after 15 to 20 years in the bottle. If you are in the trend the day of the bottling, for sure, 15 or 20 years after, you will be not in the right trend.
That's a good point.
So that's the reason why you should never forget any trend, but you should focus your attention to the taste of the place and the taste of the year, and you explain we are not a brand, we are a growth.
Mm-hmm.
There is not many different ways to produce a wine in the world. There is only two. You can produce a growth, the delivery of the taste of a place, or you can produce a brand, which is something you have in your mind and that you put in the bottle. In the two categories, there is some exceptional wines and awful wines as well. But it's two different ways to produce the wine.
Yes.
In a way, in the first way, the growth, you are an artisan and crafter. In the other one, you're more creative and you create something you have in your mind. It's two completely different ways to operate. We are a growth in Château Cheval Blanc, so we deliver the expression of a place.
It's interesting thought process, because in my industry, my side of the fence, which is marketing of wine, you hear a lot of people say, I'm going to create a brand, or I've got this idea for a brand. And I think to myself, no, there's no new ideas. Because if you're making it the way you make it, the expression is solely of what's being delivered by the earth and how the winemaker interprets the vintage and that thing. If you talk to somebody who says, I want to get in the wine business and I want to buy a chateau, and I think I could make a wine, and I can't tell you how much money I made on broken dreams of inventory sitting in a warehouse that they couldn't sell. Good wine, I mean, solid, good drinking wine, but not what you're talking about. Is that a, I have this romantic vision of wine, and I'm going to tell you about a post that somebody just put up yesterday, but I think your position in wine and what you're saying now transcends time. In other words, yes, consumerism up and down, cans, Tetra Paks, sugared wines, flavored sparkling, whatever you want to throw at the consumer, but it's like the tortoise, it's like the turtle.
Yeah.
It's just slow.
Of course, you should only know for who you work. Château Cheval Blanc is like le Château de Versailles. So this is a piece of the world patrimony that exists for a long time. We should respect it, transmit it to the next generation, and looking only long term. After, of course, I have a huge respect for some vignerons or some winemakers who want to create their own brand. So if I want to produce a wine with the spirit of Pierre-Olivier Clouet in it, I create my own brand with the name Pierre-Olivier Clouet, and I can do what I want.
Right, c'est vrai.
But if I was higher and I have the privilege to work for the Château Cheval Blanc, I had to be humble enough to respect the roots of the chateau and to try to find the right way in a context which changed in terms of climatic condition to continue to preserve the roots of Château Cheval Blanc. But as well, we have some roots, but we have some wings. And we should create a new deal, a new recipe, a new way to produce Cheval Blanc because everything changed around. So we need to change the recipe to preserve Cheval Blanc.
I like that, because those things are going to change, and you're dealing with environmental changes right now that have to produce, but it's still in the bottle is Cheval Blanc, and that's the key that's important.
Exactly, and believe me, to adapt the production of Cheval Blanc to the challenge of the climate change, we have an enormous toolbox in front of us that we just need to open. There is many things
that's
to do to fight climate change.
Right.
And it will not be technology, science, invention, and so on. It will only be the recipe of the past in the adaptation of the knowledge of today. So we can use cover crop, we can use agroforestry, we can change the canopy and the size of the vines, we can pick earlier, we can work on new rootstocks. There is many things to do that we can do to fight climate change.
Is there, well, the objective still being, I have a brand objective. Let's face it, it's wine, and in the bottle, it should taste and feel like and bring me to Cheval Blanc every time I taste it. But at the same time, you've got a corporation, you've got LVMH. When did that group acquire?
The two family, Arnaud and Frère, because we have 50% in the end of LVMH, but 50% of our owner are the family Frère, a Belgian family, very invested as well in the day-to-day running of the chateau. So they purchased Cheval Blanc together in 98. After more than 180 years in the end of the same family, the family Fourcolosac.
Wow. And so what do they tell you? What does corporate tell you? Because this is an interesting thing. I'm going to go see Chateau Lagrange tomorrow, Matthew board, and he's owned by Suntory, right? And so is there a conflict between a corporation?
It's absolutely not.
Okay.
They have the same approach than the team. Our two family of owners are part of the team, and they are impressed by the chateaux themselves. Because beautiful. When you push the door of Cheval Blanc for the first time, you can be the gardener, the CEO, or the proprietor, the owner. Yeah. You are impressed by what Cheval Blanc mean in the brain of the wine lover. The only way they describe their duty is they consider that before to be their own chateau, Cheval Blanc is a part of the world patrimony. And they have a treasury in their hand, and their challenge is to transmit that correctly, to continue to create and to move, because of course we have a certain history, we have a huge link with the tradition and so on, but as well we had to create and we had to innovate. So the challenge is to not consider Cheval Blanc as a museum. Cheval Blanc is a farm. Cheval Blanc is alive, and we should continue to move, to run, to walk, to create, to invent the Cheval Blanc of tomorrow, right, in the respect of the Cheval Blanc of yesterday. And they have that in their mind very strongly.
That's an enormous task. And I say that only because it would be easy to reverse that role and make it a museum and make it feel like it's irreverent and it's not the Cheval Blanc, it's who we are, as people. And you have to fight that every day, I would suppose.
Of course. The real treasury of Cheval Blanc, the mindset of the team is to consider that Cheval Blanc is absolutely not a luxury product.
Yes.
Cheval Blanc is an agronomical product, which is expensive, for sure, but our DNA, our DNA come from farming.
Yes, it's a farm.
We are part of agriculture, and we need to have a vision for all the agriculture of the world, to try to adapt and to move the way we're going to manage our earth, our field, our farm, in harmony with the nature.
You weren't always in wine, though.
No, I was not. I was not from a family from the wine. If we consider that to be a part of the wine world is only to produce wine, I was in a family where the wine was so important to drink it.
Okay, well, that's just as important, and that's where we come from. So, but that's interesting, though, that you, in fact, I've interviewed many winemakers that started out with Clovis Tétanger wanted to be a businessman, and others who wanted to be doctors. but it called them back. The chateau called them back, and whatever that voice in their head was, I've got to go back. What, you didn't have that voice because you didn't start there. What was it that brought you here?
So in fact, the memories I have when I was young was to enter in the cellar of my grandfather, looking after many super nice label and bottles of Bordeaux, and it's make me dream, in fact. And
Really,
when I did my first training period during my graduation in agronomy, it was here in Bordeaux, in a vineyard of Jean-Philippe Janouex, which was called Château Saint-Georges.
Ouais.
And
the Moex, the big Moex.
No, Janouex.
Okay.
And when I discovered that world, like a lot of winemakers, I fell in love, because for me this is one of the unique part of agronomy where you can be in the field in the morning, in the cellar vinifying in the afternoon, mixing the different and blending the different lot of wine during the evening, with the poetry of the blending and the tasting and so on. The day after you are with some clients in Hong Kong or in London or in Paris. So in just one job, you have plenty of situation from the field to the market, and you have a view on everything. So it was a discovery of a new world for me, and I decided to dedicate all my graduation into that direction.
And that's what it takes, right? But at 28, you were assigned the director role here.
Yeah, my CEO,
that's pretty young.
Too young, for sure, too young. You know, my CEO, Pierre Lurton, who don't need any introduction, everybody know him. Pierre Lurton hired me when I was very young, at the end of my study, my graduation in enology, and he was considering at this time that I was young, and I have the energy of the beginning of your career, not from the wine world. So he considered that I was like a new blood for Cheval Blanc, and he let me growing slowly close to him, and it was a huge privilege for me as well. I did it because I was I didn't know what I did. That's the reason why I did it. In fact, and
that's funny.
I arrived at a super nice time of the story of Cheval Blanc, because we open a new page of the history of Cheval Blanc through the building of the new winery. So I started in 2008, and it was the beginning of the sinking of the building of the new winery. So I was there to build the plan and to create the concept of that new winery. So because it was a new piece of paper.
That's pretty cool, actually.
It was super nice for me.
You see the beginning, and you know what went into it. You know what thought went into it. That's the important part. You know what you were thinking when you built it.
Exactly. And when you create something new, you can put around the table all the historical team, and telling them what will be Cheval Blanc tomorrow. And you don't arrive as a young guy explaining that we need to change that, we need to change that, we need to change that. We create the Cheval Blanc of tomorrow. So it's much more interesting in terms of team building rather than to tell this is not good, this is not good.
It puts everybody on the same page.
Exactly.
So I have a lot of interns over my years, and one of them, young lady, her job was to produce talking points for this show when I had a female winemaker in. And it inspired her to go to enology school in Cornell University. She's there now.
Okay.
And when she comes out, that's a huge space between your enology degree and where you're at today. Is that space called the passion for this industry? Because there's probably a lot of winemakers that have degrees, a lot of business people that have degrees that don't do much necessarily. I'm not condescending anybody, but what does that space involve? It's immersion into the job, the concept, the philosophy.
Of course. When you just graduate, you have a certain knowledge in your mind, in your brand, but in fact, you don't know anything about winemaking.
Yeah.
You will discover months after months, week after week, day after day, year after year. You will discover your job. So you should keep the science and the knowledge in your brand, but you absolutely need to observe nature. You need to do your own mistakes. You need to taste a lot of wines from other winemakers. You need to have the sensation to never produce the right juice. You should have the in your mind the sensation that it could be better. And the last thing, which is not very trendy in our world, is you need to have a certain stability in the place you work. Because I think that when you're a winemaker for this kind of very famous estate, you need time to enter in your job. And you produce a good Cheval Blanc because you know the place. I don't have more skills than other winemakers. I know the place I work for. So because I produce Cheval Blanc for 15 years, currently I'm in the best position to produce Cheval Blanc. Not because I have more skills, not because that I'm better, just because I know the place where I work. And this is exactly how I deal with my teams. I try to build stability for them. I want them to understand the place where they work, to slowly have enough knowledge about our terroir, our grape variety, our philosophy to produce year after year better and better wines.
That's you answered an important question, because I ask this for fun sometimes, because many winemakers bounce around. They go to South America, they go to France, they go to Australia, they go to New Zealand, and they go, who knows, maybe they go to Slovenia. And then let's say they came to a winery in Saint-Émilion. That same grape that came from that vineyard, if it's made by that winemaker who's traveled the world and made wine all over the place, is going to be a different wine than the winemaker that's been there for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
There'd be two different things.
Of course, but as well, in the concept of the winemaking in Cheval Blanc, we should not see the end of the winemakers. The two parents of our wines are the terroir and the climatic condition. We are just the doctor, well, the baby to born. But we don't want the baby to have the face of the doctor. We want the baby to have the face of the two parents. So
I never heard that.
This is super important for us to have the humility to be behind. And our job is not to do miracle. Our job is to do no mistakes, to let the terroir and the climatic condition express into the bottle.
That's great.
And we have a certain vision of the wine in Cheval Blanc, because, for example, everybody knows Cheval Blanc, but there is two other estates that built our vision of the wine. One is our white wine, Le Petit Cheval, where we produce a white wine with the conviction, the philosophy, the DNA, the identity of Château Cheval Blanc, but into a white. In fact, the question is, if Cheval Blanc was a white, which kind of wine it could be? So the fact that we produce a white behind Cheval Blanc is super important to nourish our vision of the maturity, of the balance, of the delicacy, of the complexity, and so on. And the second super important project currently is Cheval des Andes, a growth that we have in Mendoza, where we produce we produce a blend between Malbec and Cabernet Sauvignon, and we bring the vision of Cheval Blanc concerning the maturity, the precision of the viticulture, the balance between the wine and the wood, the delicacy of extraction and so on, the aging potential, the blending of the two grape variety. We bring that vision of Cheval Blanc in the terroir of Mendoza with the climatic condition of Mendoza and with the grape varieties of Mendoza.
That's so interesting. Argentina, I had Comte Arnaud, who's got vineyards. I forgot the brand name, but are you other places than Argentina, Chile, China, or is it just Argentina?
No, we only have Argentina.
Yeah. So the idea of taking your philosophy to another country, aren't we starting over and saying, okay, we've got to learn what this terroir is. We're going to go at 1,500 meters. We're going to go at 1,200 meters.
Exactly.
All that changes again.
It's changed completely your mind. At the beginning of the white, at the beginning of Cheval des Andes, of course, Cheval Blanc bring a lot to the notoriety and to the capacity to increase in quality in those two vineyards. But after 10 years, it starts to become the opposite, and Cheval des Andes and the white bring a lot to Cheval Blanc for two reasons.
Wow.
In the Andes, in Mendoza, why Cheval des Andes bring to Cheval Blanc? Because due to the climate change, today, the team of Cheval Blanc operate already in a dry and warm region.
Ah, très intéressant.
As well, because the team of Cheval Blanc produce 2 wines per year. One in the winter, Cheval des Andes. One in the summer, Cheval Blanc.
Wow.
So we vinify 2 times in comparison to our competitor. And for the white, it's bring a lot to Cheval Blanc because when the picking starts here in Cheval Blanc, we already vinify for 3 weeks in the white, and we have already a vision of the year, a vision of the balance of the grapes, of the interpretation of the balance into the juice, into the wine.
Wow! So it's education, it's timing, it's just a whole bigger picture of what's going on. That's really fascinating stuff. Do you chase points, accolades? I mean, you were the top 50 winemakers in France, which is amazing. 13 to be exact. But do you care about those? I mean, is it a marketing? I mean, Cheval Blanc is going to get the accolades, but do you think the consumer cares?
No, we should be humble enough to tell that we are always happy, even when a wine critics give you a 100 point, or when you have some super nice article or super nice ranking in classification or things like that. We are like all human, we are happy, but we don't do anything to appear in those classifications.
Not in this room.
Exactly. We don't produce a wine to obtain 100 point from the critics. So we consider that we have as a job to produce the best Cheval Blanc as possible. If the people understand what we do, we are happy with that.
Right.
But we don't do anything to obtain those ranking, those rating, and so on.
There's an interesting trend. Well, I'm not sure if we don't have enough time to discuss all my opinions and asking your opinions of these trends that are happening, but I have my own daughters. They're millennials. They love wine. And one of my son-in-laws is a very good palate. He looks for interesting wines from different parts of the world. He stays away, actually, from Bordeaux and Burgundy. And I thought that's very fascinating. And I think that's the experiential part of that generation. They like to experience things. But it's becoming more important because of the internet and because of the barrage of emails that we get from wine companies, that the experience exists, that this story exists, that people can come to this incredible place
and understand the place, understand the philosophy of the team, understand the typicity of the wine, and so on. And I think currently, the wine lover everywhere in the world, I don't know if they understand what happened to them, but they have a huge quantity of wine to discover. They have much more diversity than 20 years ago in terms of wine region. In the past, we had 4 or 5 wine regions in the world in the cellar of the wine lover. Today, even me, who am passionate about wine, I have wines from Brittany, some wines from region in the world where we don't look after 20 years ago. So I think it's quite interesting for the wine lover to discover some new world, a new piece of land where we can produce some good wines, and as well we have the access to a lot of different vintages. My grandfather, 30 years ago, have in his cellar some beautiful Burgundy and Bordeaux wines, but only from warm and dry vintages, because all the other was not good enough. What our son and grandson will have in their cellar is a diversity of vintages with age. Right. So they will have some Bordeaux with 30 years old, with some cool vintage in it, some dry, some warm, some wet, some early, some late. So the diversity of wines that we can store in our cellar today is enormous.
That's incredible viewpoint of that. Because, you know, I read the book about Madame Clicquot, and, you know, even in the 1700s, the late 1700s, just before the Renaissance, there was a cool climate change. It was considerably cooler for 15 years. And so their job was the same as your job. Bring the best to the table based on what's been delivered to them. So that's what I want to talk about now, this consumerism of wine. And we know that we need to have some people come to the table to learn about wine, and it takes certain types of wines to get there. Let's say White Zinfandel in America in 1974. But now we got cans, and we've got milk cartons. We've got a 3-liter bag in the box. We have flavored, distilled, you know, ready-to-drink cocktails that are competing against this wine, competing against what we love. So can you define, this is the real question, can you define what it is that allows us to sit, you and I, and have this conversation, that allows May-Éliane Lancasson to tell me, look, we had dinner in 1993, but we're still friends because of this product, this industry we're in. How do we define what that is? How do we define for other people, this is what brings us together? Is that possible?
Your question is about the I'm not sure to
well, how is, because it's a tough question. What is it about wine that allows this to happen, that we have a friendship built sitting right here?
So, you know, wine is many different things. First, when you drink a glass of wine, you drink a part of culture, a part of history, a part of magic, with a super long history, and we want to share that. After drinking wine as well is the pleasure to have a nice discussion, and you can discuss about the wine, but as well, you can just have the pleasure of drinking wine and make some great conversation around. I remember Jean-Claude Berrouet always tells that you recognize an exceptional wine because it helps the table to have some nice conversation. So you don't automatically need to talk about the wine you have in your glass. But when you drink a good glass of wine, the conversations are much more interesting because it's elevate in a certain way the discussion around the table.
C'est le point, right? Because that's it right there. And not every wine does that. And I think that is going back to the first part of our conversation, which is bringing to the table what was brought from the soul of the soil, the soul of this terroir, the soul of the winemaker, the soul of the team. And I tell people, you can't taste that character. You can't say this acid is because of the history, whatever the issue, but you can feel.
Exactly. And you know, this is, what you say is super important because what is a wine professional? A wine professional is somebody who have the capacity to talk about the wine. But what is a wine lover? A wine lover is somebody who enjoys the wine. And you don't need to be an expert of art to appreciate, to look after the painting. You don't need to be a musician, an expert of music to appreciate to listen a beautiful concerto. When you are an expert, you know how to describe it. But the emotion, the sensation, the pleasure you have to listen to the music, to look after the painting, or to drink the glass of wine is the same if you are only a wine lover or a wine professional or a wine expert.
That is a great definition and separation, because you can be a professional and not a wine lover.
Exactly,
right?
Absolutely.
And you can be a wine lover and obviously not a professional.
Exactly. A wine professional is somebody who is trained to describe his sensation because he needs to take decision with his taste.
Right, yes. You know, we're almost out of time, but I got to settle. I got to move this one more notch, one more level, un nouveau, because there's a whole movement now amongst younger drinkers that we need to change the language of wine. I don't know what that means. I think it means that they don't understand when you say it's got raspberries and cedar box and tobacco and all those things, that the descriptors, which I agree can be very difficult to process. If somebody tells me this tastes like Satsuma plum, I don't know what that means. Okay. But changing it isn't going to do anything, because if you decide to change the descriptions to more contemporary words like Lucky Charms cereal or something, I'm not going to know what that means either. Right. And I think that the wine professionals today, and I have great respect for MWs, Master Sommeliers, Master of Wine, great respect. It's a huge accolade, right? But I think they propagate, I think they promote the aristocracy, you know, this level of lack, make people feel intimidated.
For sure.
When your side, what you're discussing is this wine enthusiast who just wants to feel something when they drink wine. But do you feel the same as I do, that we're self-intimidate, we're self-creating these problems?
We need both, in fact. For sure, the wine is a complex world. We all want to simplify the access to wine. I think that you can have pleasure with wine at different level. There is different layer of understanding of the wine, and we need all of them. We need to let people enjoy the wine, have pleasure, just to say, wow, this is a super nice glass of red wine. I love that. I want to drink it once again. I want to discover this wine region, but I don't know a lot about the wine. And slowly he enters in the world of wine, and 20 or 30 or 40 years after, he will become a super precise wine lover who knows everything. He read a lot of books, and because there is the different layers. Concerning the way we describe the wine, I think that there is a lot of bullshit as well in that world, because you had to tell your story with the description of 1,000 different wines. They are all red. They all smell more or less raspberry and cherry, and you had to find some specific, complex and detailed word to describe it. This is very, very challenging. And when you look at the way the vocabulary of tasting evolve, 1 century ago, there is no nature description of the wine, right, fruit, forest, and so on.
That's right.
They were using the behavior of the people. We say, this wine is welcoming,
That's right.
This wine is charming, this wine is close, this wine is... So the way we describe the wine evolved, and the young generation had to invent their own vocabulary.
Wow.
They will took the culture of the wine and they will mix that to put that in the codes of their generation.
That is a great description of what's happening and why it changes. Because if my father would have, when I would talk to him, when I would explain something to him, and he did this for 50 years, would say, we don't speak like that. We don't talk like that. Michael Broadbent would not use those words today. Harry Waugh, they wouldn't use those words today. But that's an interesting approach, because that it will change again, probably, right?
For sure.
That is really, it will evolve. Even today, and I guess this is the point that part of this important part of this conversation, as people's palates evolve and they learn. in America, as we discussed before, and this is the last thought, the Napa Valley has created its personality. And there are people that don't want to be part of that personality. They want to make wines of terroir and structure. But the ones that sell, there's Paso Robles is another area of California that produces big, fat, you know that Dow Brothers sold for $1 billion. Okay, so not bad, right? but there are people on my trip today that have been now experiencing Grand Cru wines with structure, with acid, with balance. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, wow, this is really, really cool. It's new.
You can enter in the wine world from different door.
Oh, good point.
You will evolve your whole life. I'm passionate about wine for many years, and I remember when I was student, I break my money in few bottles of wine that I consider was super nice, and I have 50 or 60 of those bottles in my cellar today. Wow. That I don't want to drink because my taste evolved a lot. Yes. And this is the kind of bottle I don't want to drink today.
You're afraid.
I'm afraid, exactly. But I think that the life is long, and wine is a journey, and you have time to discover it, to evolve in that world, to change your mind. This is like gastronomy, like music, like art. So you can enter in different door, and you will have your own experience, your own meeting with people who are gonna make you more sensitive about few things, and your taste will evolve. The unique thing that should not evolve is the kind of growth that built the history of the wine. Mm-hmm. La Romanée-Conti today should continue to produce La Romanée-Conti with the same conviction and philosophy than 9 centuries ago. Mm-hmm. Cheval Blanc should keep the roots of the Cabernet Franc and the clay soils and the diversity of material vegetal and so on. So this is our lighthouse that built some reference, some big pillars. But as well, those big elephants should let some new vignerons, some new growth, some new brand existing. Wine is alive, and we should let all the generation talking together, all the diversity talking together. There is no competition. We have all the same clients. There is only 2 or 3% of the world who drink wine.
Yes.
So we should let that diversity enter in their brand.
Thank you for letting us into your journey today. This is a fascinating conversation, and my friends are going to laugh. I use that word a lot, but really a pleasure to have you here and a pleasure to be here. And we look forward to hearing more as we go through the tasting, etc.
It was a real pleasure for me. Sorry for my English.
No, it's absolutely. Sorry for my French. Cheers.
The language of wine is universal. Cheers.
Merci. Au revoir.
Avec grand plaisir.